Everyone seems to be enamored with omega-3 fatty acids. We've been told that fish oil supplements are great and everybody should take them. But is this true or just another scam from the supplement companies looking to twist the science to their benefit?
Before we get into the video, we want to tell you about Carnivore Aurelius' beef liver crisps. Conventional beef liver is the most nutritious food on the planet, but it tastes terrible and it takes time to prepare. Now you can get nature's original superfood ready to eat and it actually tastes good. With just 3 simple ingredients, the crisps are convenient, high in protein, and loaded with unique and bioavailable vitamins and minerals. Go check them out using the link in the description.
We should all know how bad vegetable oils are at this point, but the yin to seed oil's yang is fish oil. These supplements are advertised as concentrated sources of EPA and DHA, omega-3 fatty acids. There's been a lot of hubbub about the omega-6 to omega-3 ratio, but honestly, it's been way overblown. The only time this is truly relevant is if you are only taking in the precursor forms of these fats, and unless you're a vegan, that's irrelevant. Linoleic and alpha-linolenic acid are the plant forms of these essential fatty acids, but both must be converted to the active form, arachidonic acid and docosahexaenoic acid. The ratio matters in this case because the conversion of the precursor forms to the active forms of these fats use the same enzymes, so they compete for transport. Getting in the right ratio will ensure you have the correct balance of these nutrients. However, if you're not a vegan, and hopefully you aren't, the ratio doesn't matter nearly as much. There is some evidence to suggest that some of the deleterious effects of high omega-6 intake can be ameliorated by a compensation in omega-3 intake, but this just leads to more problems. For example, experiments have shown that fish oil supplementation does increase insulin sensitivity, at least in the short term. However, those same fish oil supplements cause an increase in plasma malondialdehyde and lipid peroxides. These compounds are both involved in many modern diseases. This suggests that the best strategy for your health is to keep both your omega-6 and omega-3 intake low, so long as you meet your essential fatty acid requirements. The thing is, omega-3 fatty acids from fish oil supplements can have benefits in some cases. One statement that is often thrown around is that omega-6s are inflammatory and omega-3s are anti-inflammatory. It's kind of just accepted as fact, and I even fell victim to this way of thinking in a previous video. Both omega-6 and omega-3 fats are essential because they are required to synthesize a variety of compounds in the body, many of which play a role in the inflammatory process. It's not as simple as eat more omega-6 to induce inflammation and eat more omega-3 to reduce inflammation. The body is smart. It doesn't like to just start becoming inflamed because it has the tools to. It needs a reason to do this. That's like saying I can get huge just by constantly slamming protein. No, I still need to work out because that provides the stimulus to build muscle. We also need to understand that inflammation is a critical process in the body that has largely been demonized by the mainstream media. Look, I get it. Excessive chronic inflammation is a huge player in many diseases, but we need inflammation sometimes or we'd all be dead. In a non-pathogenic setting, inflammation is initiated, it does its thing, and then it ends. Trying to interrupt this natural process by chugging fish oil isn't the right approach. You're essentially using the fish oil as a drug. In fact, many over-the-counter anti-inflammatory drugs are cyclooxygenase inhibitors, reducing the activity of the enzyme that converts omega-6 fats into their corresponding inflammatory compounds. By taking in a ton of omega-3, you're inhibiting the same process because omega-3s compete with omega-6s for this enzyme. By the way, omega-6s are necessary for compounds that stop the inflammatory process.
Do you know what you just did? I extinguished our pilot! No, he has a parachute. You've extinguished us!
My whole point is that you shouldn't try to artificially inhibit your body's capability to inflame. If you have chronic inflammation, you should get to the root cause of it and address that, instead of putting a band-aid on it by taking fish oil. Another important thing to consider is that polyunsaturated fats, omega-6, omega-3, E123 omega, it doesn't matter. They are all unstable and can lead to a variety of nasty byproducts that can cause problems in your body. In fact, the fats in fish oil are so unstable that studies have found that on average these supplements have well over the amount of oxidized byproducts that is considered safe. My philosophy is that you shouldn't be taking in more polyunsaturated fat than you require to prevent these harmful byproducts from forming. Omega-6s are constantly demonized not because they are inherently worse than omega-3s, but because they are far more ubiquitous in the Western diet. If instead of Procter & Gamble realizing they could sell cottonseed oil as food for dirt cheap, they somehow did the same for fish oil, I promise you omega-3s wouldn't be as praised as they are now. The bottom line is that excess consumption of either leads to many of the same problems. The best way to get enough, but not too much, of both is to eat well-raised animal products. Pastured egg yolks, red meat, and of course fish are great sources of both omega-6 and omega-3 fats, but not at the ridiculous levels found in these modern oils. Don't let them fool you. Subscribe to our channel.